Before we get started in looking at the actual Latin text, I want to talk to you a little bit about sentence diagramming. Okay, how I'm going to approach teaching you Latin through this visual aid on YouTube. All right, so say if I have the first Latin sentence we will encounter. I'm going to write this out. All right, so notice the first word that we're looking at is Roma. Okay, and like in the last preliminary lecture that we discussed, this A signifies that Roma is in the nominative case. Therefore, it is the subject of our sentence, and I will denote that by placing an S above the noun that is the subject. However, notice right here, we have an A with a macron, and also notice that in precedes the word and is exerting force on Italia, right? So if you remember, the ablative of place where uses this preposition in order to control the word after it, and the word after it appears in the ablative case. Right? Here is our verb, right? That's our verb. And notice again that the ablative of place where is in a prepositional phrase. So above that, I will simply put P dot P. Okay? P dot P, prepositional phrase, or if it's easier, I could simply put A P W, ablative place where. But I think I'm just going to stick with PP for prepositional phrase. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the actual text in question. All right, so notice this is the beginning of Lectio 1. How do we know it's Lectio 1? Right here. This Roman numeral 1 tells us not only is it line 1, but it's also Lectio 1. Okay? And if you'll notice down the side here, we have 1, this is line 2, this is 3, this is 4, and then 5 right here with the number 5, right? And it continues all the way down. So I believe Lectio 1 ends at line 20 or so. And then you'll see a Roman numeral 2 on the inseam of the book, and that tells you Lectio 2 begins. All right, so now let's return to our diagramming. So we already diagrammed this sentence, but we'll do it again. Subject, our verb, and then our prepositional phrase. Notice the verb right here, est. We're going to see it change in a few minutes when we get further down the paragraph. Let me read this for you. Roma in Italia est. Rome is in Italy. Italia in Europa est. Again, look at the same sentence structure. Okay, this right here, this A, tells us that this is in the nominative case, and it's serving as our subject of the sentence. Again, notice this A with the macron. Notice the preposition in preceding the word Europa, and notice here our verb. Okay, so this right here is our ablative of place where, because of the ablative case on Europa. So it's also a prepositional phrase. Italy is in Europe. Moving on. Graecia in Europa est. Graecia in Europa est. So again, we have to look at the endings of our words. Notice this A here. Okay, this makes this our subject. Notice the preposition in again, and notice the ablative case on this particular word, Europa. This again makes it our prepositional phrase, which is the ablative of place where in this case. And then we have our verb, our linking verb, I should say, est. All right, so remember we talked about in the previous lecture, linking verb. So each of these verbs, est, all of them, maybe I should denote this instead of just putting a simple V by each one of these. I should mark it with LV. Okay, linking verb. All right, the linking verb tells us a simple statement or a fact of being or condition. Okay, it's not an action verb. Greece is in Europe. Moving along. Italia et Graecia in Europa sunt. Okay? Notice now our verb, well, first before we get to that, look at how many subjects we have. We have this is in the nominative, this is in the nominative. Okay? Look here. This is in the ablative case because this preposition in comes before Europa. So it is exerting control over the word Europa. But notice here our verb. It has changed. Okay? First, we need to denote our subjects. These are our two subjects in the sentence. Notice the previous sentences only had one subject. This is why the verb is simply est in the previous sentences. But look now at this one. There's two subjects and the verb has shifted to sunt, meaning the verb is plural because it's agreeing with the number of subjects in the sentence. Okay? So it says Italy and Greece are in Europe. Okay? Moving along. Hispania quoque in Europa est. Look what happened. Our verb went back to est because we only have how many subjects? One. That's right. We only have one subject. And here is our A that tells us it's in the nominative case. Here we're introduced to this word, quoque, which is an adverb that means also. Okay? In precedes Europa. This right here tells us Europa is in the ablative case, and therefore it should read, there's our linking verb, Spain is also in Europe. Okay, look at the next sentence. Hispania et Italia et Graecia in Europa sunt. Look what happened. There's a change that happened again. How many subjects do we have? Look at all your nominative endings. So we have one here, and one here. All these are subjects. Notice here our preposition. Notice the A with the macron on Europa, and notice our linking verb has changed to plural form in order to agree with the number of subjects, which are three subjects in this sentence. There's Spain, Italy, and Greece. So it translates as Spain, Italy, and Greece are in Europe. Jumping down here to the next, let's see, we're at line 11, Esne Gallia in Europa. So I'm not going to go through the entire text. I just want to show you the essential stuff that we need to learn. The rest of it with the vocabulary list supplied for you. You should be able to read this and understand what's going on. Okay, it just takes a little effort and a little study. So remember we talked about the enclitic ne in the preliminary lecture to this lectio. Notice right here, so we have esne. Notice if I separate these words, you'll see the verb est. But notice here, this word attached to it is ne. Remember we said an enclitic leans on a word. It can't stand alone, so it must have a word to lean on. So now we need to find our subject of the sentence, which is Gaul. Right? And remember, here's our preposition, and here is our ablative case. Right? So this tells us it's a prepositional phrase. So how do we translate this? It's a question. Okay, esne. So remember that ne also introduces a question that expects a positive or negative response. Okay, so it can be a yes or no response to its question. So our verb is actually right here and it's attached. So you'd say, is Gaul in Europe? Moving along. Gallia in Europa est. So it's the same basic sentence structure that we saw earlier. Okay, so I'm not going to diagram these, so you should have a handle on how to diagram these sentences with this simple structure. Okay, let's look at this right here, which is, again, we'll slice that in two. Notice it's our linking verb with an A attached to it. Now we got to figure out, in this sentence, what is our subject? So look at our case endings right here. Roma has a simple A. Gallia has an A with a macron. But notice too, it's preceded by the preposition in, making it a prepositional phrase. Okay. Moving along. So here's our subject. Is Rome in Gaul? Now notice the answer, the next sentence is the answer, and notice it has a negative in the sentence. Okay? How would you translate this? Well, we first need to find our subject. This tells us this is a subject because it's a simple A. Here we have an ablative case. And this is a prepositional phrase. And we have our linking verb. Rome is not in Gaul. Okay? Look at the next sentence. We have this new word here. It's called an interrogative. What is an interrogative? An interrogative is a word that introduces a question. Ubi simply asks where. Okay? So you should be able to translate that sentence without my assistance. Roma est in Italia. Ubi est Italia? Italia in Europa est. Ubi sunt Gallia et Hispania? Gallia et Hispania in Europa sunt. Okay, you should be able to translate these using the vocab and going through the simple steps that we've described thus far. Alright, so let's look at this particular sentence here. So it says, Nilos es fluvios. So notice the sentence structure has changed. We no longer see in with a word following it, say like Europa. Instead, we have another noun in the sentence. But notice too that these are not first declension nouns, right? Remember we talked about in the preliminary lecture that first declension feminine nouns end with an A. But notice these end with US. These belong to the second declension masculine noun. So this one is our subject. What was this one? If you'll recall, if we have a linking verb in the sentence and there is another noun, it can't be a direct object, right? The only thing that it can be is our predicate nominative. Right? It's simply telling us something important about Nilos. It's telling us what it is. So it says the Nile is a river. So it's essentially saying the Nile equals river. Okay. Next line, next sentence is Reinos es fluvios. Same idea. Right? Again, we ends with a US here and a US here. Then we have our linking verb. Okay? So here is our subject. Fluvios is our predicate nominative, telling us exactly what the Rhine is. It is simply a river. The Rhine is a river. Let's go down here. All right. So it says, Nilos et Reinos fluvii sunt. Now notice we have how many subjects? Well, we have one here, because of the US there. We have one here. What is this word fluvios? What is it doing? Well, it's simply the word we saw previously, fluvios, but it has, instead of a US on it, an I with a macron. Okay? This I with the macron signifies to us that it has to agree, or it is agreeing, with the number of subjects. That means it's plural. Okay, it's in the nominative case, but it's plural. Also, look at our linking verb. It too is plural. So it says the Nile and the Rhine are rivers. Okay, moving along. Danuvios quoque fluvios est. Notice that our sentence structure is basically the same, except for we have the adverb quoque, meaning also, and we've lost one of our subjects. So we only have one subject in this sentence, and it is this word here, Danuvius. And then we have this right here, means it's our predicate nominative. Make sure we labeled the one we did before. Predicate nominative. And this is our linking verb. Remember, fluvios is not a direct object. It is the predicate nominative, simply telling us what the Danube, that Danuvios means the Danube River, is. So the Danube also is a river. That's how you would translate that. Moving to the next line. It says, Rhenos et Danuvios sunt fluvii in Germania. So this has added pretty much all the different variations of sentence structures together into one that we have seen so far. So we have to find our subject. In this case, there's two subjects. So they're both second declension masculine. And then we have this right here, which means this is nominative plural because it's agreeing with the number of subjects. Our subjects are Rhenos and Danuvios. Sunt is our linking verb. It too is plural because it has to agree with the number of subjects. And then we have in Germania. Notice here we have the preposition in. The word after it is in the ablative case, making that our ablative of place where. So it says the Rhine and the Danube are rivers in Germany. Tiberis fluvius in Italia est. Okay, so this is Tiberis. Just know it's a subject. It's a different declension that the author introduced in the book early on, but doesn't go over. We know that's the subject. But here we have our predicate nominative in fluvius. We have our prepositional phrase, which is the ablative of place where, in this case, telling us location, and then we have our linking verb. The Tiberis is a river in Italy. Alright, so that finishes up Lectio 1 for Lingua Latina. So this is my recommendations to you. So, after you've read Lectio 1 and gone through it and translated it all by yourself, and been able to recognize and identify sentence structures, I highly suggest that you go back, reread what you've read, and to see if you can remember it. The more you can reread it, the better off you're going to be when learning Latin. Okay, so if you've labeled it as I have, I would suggest that you erase these. Well, it probably doesn't matter. Just try to read it. Okay, reread it again. Thank you, and I hope this lecture has been informative and enjoyable.